Good evening, and thank you for coming. Right now, we are conducting our endorsement interview for Clark County District Court Judge Department 11. This event is sponsored by Timothy Treffinger for Clark County District Attorney. Mr. Treffinger has not been endorsed, or cannot be endorsed by the person that we're speaking with. Our process is open to the public, live on Facebook. None of the panel members know each other's questions. The president of Veterans at Politics International is not a voting member of our endorsement process. And most importantly, our endorsements are not for sale. Unfortunately, sometimes we got to get a lot of disclosures out of the way. So
I'm a lawyer. I know.
Yeah, right. So, Judge, first off, thank you for coming. And so basically how this process works, it's pretty simple. First, we'll introduce the panel members will introduce ourselves, and then you'll be given a minute and 30 seconds or so to introduce yourself, what you're running for, and why you're seeking our endorsement. And then we'll ask you questions. Try to keep your answers around 2 minutes, but we'll just kind of play it by ear on that. And then at the end, you will be given a minute and 30 seconds for a final closing and why people should reelect you and how to get involved. Well, first off, I just want to say my name's Jim Jonas. I've been involved with Veterans of Politics since 2008, and I consider judicial elections extremely important.
My name is Robert Faust. I'm a third-generation VFW. My grandfather fought in World War I. My father fought in World War II. I fought in Vietnam. I spent 4 years in the penitentiary, federal penitentiary for drug smuggling. I played professional baseball until I was 45, and I'm the author of 2 books. And you can get the books on Amazon.
Frank Friends. I'm a father, family court activist, and vice president of my daughter's PTA.
All right, Judge, if you got a minute and 30 seconds or whatever, just introduce yourself, what seat you're running for re-election, and why you want our endorsement.
First of all, thank you for having me and for inviting me. I am District Court Judge Ellie Roohani. I am your judge in Department 11. I will be on your ballot in November. I was appointed to the bench in December of this year, of last year, and I assumed the bench in January of this year. I went through the judicial selection process, which is a vigorous process, to determine whether I was fit to be a judge, and I was determined to be fit to be a judge. I'm here because I was invited to be here, and I think it is important for judges and for community members to give honor to those who have served our country. And it would have been rude and unprofessional of me to not come here tonight. But more importantly, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more this evening, I'm the child of religious refugees. I'm an immigrant, and you all are heroes. Really. The freedoms that we have in this country are because of people who are willing to put their lives on the line to ensure those freedoms. Those are freedoms that are not present in other countries, including the country that my family came from. And I think it's important for us to honor that. And it would mean a lot to me to have the endorsement of heroes.
Okay, my first question, since you went through the appointment process. Like, I know it's Nevada state law that judges are elected. Okay. But when it comes to the appointment process, I've went back and forth a couple times on whether appointing judges is better or electing judges is better. And so my question is, the appointment process, do you really think the appointment process is a good way to go? Depending on whether the governor is actually a lawyer or not and actually understands the law. Is the governor of a state actually the best person to decide who to appoint?
Sure. So part of the judicial selection process that I think is excellent, and I think it is, it's a very vigorous process. There is a very long application. You can Google me and find my application online. I believe it's 50 pages. It goes through everything that you've ever done, both in terms of your private life as well as your public life and your service to the community. One of the things that the judicial appointment process does that perhaps electing our judges and just putting your name on the ballot doesn't ensure, they have talked to judges that I've appeared in front of, and they've asked those judges, does she show up prepared? What is her temperament? Does she blow a gasket when things don't go her way? They have talked to my opposing counsel to see if I have been fair and just in my dealings with them. What is my temperament? And they've looked at my work product, and they've talked to my past employers to see if I've always put out a good work product. So yes, the governor does ultimately select from the 3 names that are sent to him, but the commission is made up of judges, it's made up of lawyers, it's made up of community leaders from all over the state. And it's an excellent, very, very thorough process. I would say that the judges that we have appointed are among the best that we have on our bench. And the election is the way for our electorate to recognize the legitimacy of that process. So yeah, the governor is not a lawyer. Sometimes he might be. Governor Sandoval was a lawyer and he was a judge. But he's a citizen and he lives in our communities. And so he knows what our community, he knows the pulse of our community. And so I think that the selection, once it gets to the governor, he can't make a bad choice from the 3. It's already somebody who's qualified. It's already somebody who has great temperament and demeanor. So he's just determining as a average citizen, just as you, me, whoever it might be, who he thinks might best serve our community, because it is a position of service.
Two questions. One super quick. Do you mainly deal with civil or criminal in the department you're in?
I have a split docket. It's 60% civil and 40% criminal.
Okay. So with that being said, there is a sitting judge, I believe he's a Supreme Court judge, that when he was a prosecuting attorney, had evidence of the person he was prosecuting was 100% innocent from the crime, I believe 860 miles away from Nevada when the murder occurred. Did nothing to stop this and sentenced that gentleman. Well, that gentleman was sentenced to 20 years. On the bench, what would you do to stop things like this from occurring in criminal cases if you found out that one of the attorneys was withholding evidence that proved the innocence of another person?
So let me start by giving you a little bit of background. Before I became a judge, I was a federal prosecutor. And so the rules that apply in federal cases with respect to what you have to turn over are identical to the rules of what you have to turn over in under state law. I was trained by the Department of Justice that has an open door policy with respect to what we call discovery. I had a binder. I would invite defense counsel to come into my office and to look at exactly what I was looking at. A prosecutor's job is to do justice. That is what my job was to do. Justice sometimes looks like you win, and justice sometimes looks like you lose. This is a truth-seeking process. And so I think that the DAs and the PDs who appear in front of me would tell you that there's nothing to be afraid of with respect to truth. And so I am much more, coming from that prosecutorial background, I am much more aware of what the obligations are and making sure that I hold everybody to that standard. And I enjoy the support of the public defenders who appear in front of me because they know that I do that. So I would love to tell you that our justice system is perfect. It's not. Humans are part of the system, so of course we make mistakes. But there's nothing to be afraid of with respect to truth. If a person is found innocent by a jury of their peers, that's truth. If a person is found guilty by a jury of their peers, that's also a form of truth. And so we need to be open to that and not let our egos get in the way of withholding evidence accidentally or on purpose or anything else.
So, Judge Roohani, how do you feel about the bail situation?
I'm sorry.
Open bail.
So I was trained I mentioned I was trained in the federal system. So in Nevada, our federal courts, we don't have cash bail. It doesn't exist in our state. You're either a risk of non-appearance and a danger to the community, and that's how I was trained. And you're in or you're out with conditions. I think that the Valdez-Jimenez decision has brought Nevada a lot more into line with what federal law is. I think that there are many considerations that a judge has to take in both respect to criminal history, likelihood of appearing, dangerousness, ties to the community, the nature of the crime, all sorts of things to make the best decision possible. Those decisions are typically appealed to me as a district judge. And I can tell you the most common complaint or argument is that this is a bail that somebody cannot afford. The analysis that I go through under Valdez-Jimenez is money becoming a barrier and keeping someone in custody. We don't keep people in custody because they're poor. That's not our system of justice in the United States. If you're dangerous or you're not going to show up, I'm going to ensure that our community is safe and that you're going to show up to court because that's what's required under the law. But I think we need to be fair to people. They are presumed to be innocent until a jury of their peers finds them guilty.
Okay. Well, thank you. You basically answered like my next three questions.
I'm sorry.
Sort of. No. Actually, that's a good thing. I appreciate that. One of the biggest misnomers that I hear all the time when it comes to electing judges is when, the public actually takes the time, hopefully, to educate themselves on the judicial candidates. It's always interesting. We all have bias. Like you said, the court is made up of people. The bias typically tends to be that former prosecutors are pretty much lock them up, pro death penalty, whatever, like as hard as they can be on crime. And defense attorneys are like, they're liberal, weak, soft on crime. What would you say to those people that say that, oh, she's a former prosecutor, therefore she's going to be biased towards the district attorney office?
So I want to start by pushing back a little bit. So the prosecutors who appear in front of me are not like that. They're not. I think that they know that I expect more of them and they rise to the challenge. And the public defenders who appear in front of me are also not like that. They live in this community. They also want to keep this community safe. I would tell people is if they say, oh, she's a former prosecutor, she's going to be always prosecution friendly. I would say, go talk to the public defenders who appear in front of me and ask them if that's true. I will tell you it's not true. My job is not to advocate. If I wanted to advocate, I would have stayed a lawyer, right? I don't want to be an advocate anymore. I want to be a neutral. I want to look at the evidence. I want to look at the facts before me, and I just want to apply the law. There's no agenda. And I will say that I have the most excellent attorneys who appear in front of me because they know that I demand excellence, and they know that I show up prepared every single day. And if they're going to keep up with me, they're going to have to show up prepared too.
So Nevada is a pro-death penalty state. We actually have it. Haven't used it in, I think, 56 years or probably longer. We just spent, I think, $14 million building a new execution chamber, which is great for taxpayers who are housing criminals who are 100% guilty of a capital crime, like the shooters at the Lee Discount Liquor or the Home Depot shooters who fled to Arizona and got brought back here. Cases like this will be, brought forth to you. Is the death penalty something you're going to take off the table, or is it something you're going to leave on the table to protect these communities that you're so ready to defend?
So the first thing is my criminal docket right now does not include death penalty eligible cases. So right now, as it sits, those cases would not come before me. We have a handful of judges who are designated as our homicide team, and they work on those cases and they make those determinations. So I want to start with that. So I'm not actively making these decisions right now. Our country works when people stay in their lane. And this is what I mean. We have 3 branches of government. Each branch of government has a role and a responsibility. The executive branch is the branch that decides whether they're going to seek the death penalty. The legislative branch is the branch that decides whether we're going to have the death penalty in the state. And the judicial branch interprets those laws according to the United States Constitution, the Nevada Constitution, and the guidance of the Nevada Supreme Court. I believe in staying in my lane. The legislature has decided what the law is going to be. The executive branch, the district attorney, will decide whether to seek the death penalty or not. Whether a person receives the death penalty or not is not up to me. It's up to a jury. The jury decides whether the person gets the death penalty or not. It's my job to follow the law and to make the process as fair as humanly possible. And that's what I commit to doing.
We know that the district attorney is the one that brings the prosecutions most of the UNC. But did you deal with the city attorney at all? Does he bring prosecutions like battery or assault or anything like that?
No. So the city attorney is typically bringing cases in justice court. And so that is the court. I don't like saying below. I like saying it's a different court. So that we deal with gross misdemeanors and felonies. We don't deal with the misdemeanors, which is largely what I don't want to overstate that. They don't bring cases before me. I get the district attorney's cases and sometimes the attorney general's cases.
Battery is typically a felony.
Battery can be a felony, it can be a gross misdemeanor, or it can be a misdemeanor in the state.
So, Judge, one of the things that I've heard from other judges in district court is one of the toughest things they have to do is when it does come to sentencing and like what their decision process is behind sentencing. I really like what you said about the system works best when we stay in our lane. Yeah. So I understand that a lot of sentencing will end up being because of statutes, minimum or maximum statutes that the legislature has already put in front of you. But could you just briefly explain to me how you would go about weighing sentencing?
Sentencing is the hardest, one of the hardest, if not the hardest decisions that I have to make. I don't take lightly sending anyone to prison. I've visited them. They're not nice places. They are not places that you want to frequent. In my mind, I have to weigh several things when I sentence people. The first is I have to look at the human being in front of me. Their background, where do they come from? What are their life experiences? What have they been through? What has shaped them to get them to the point that they're standing in front of me? I have to weigh what they did. There have to be consequences for our actions. I have a 2-year-old. She does something wrong, she goes to timeout. If you do something wrong as an adult, sometimes you need a timeout. So there have to be consequences for our actions. So I have to look at what they did. I have to look at the victim's perspective. If a person is mentally ill or high on some substance, the victim doesn't know that. The victim just knows that they're suffering as a result of the actions of this individual. I have to look at community safety. But the most important thing that I have to look at is, how do I fix the problem so it never happens again? It is an unfortunate reality that in our community, we have a very high incidence of mental health and substance abuse issues. There is a very large majority of criminal defendants who come before me that it is abundantly clear from the documents in front of me that the way they got to the point of standing in front of me is substance abuse and mental health. So I think to myself, I can fix the substance abuse, provide treatment for the mental health, and make sure that nobody becomes a victim of this individual ever again. And that this individual can also have a life and be treated with dignity and integrity and respect as they are a human being. And sometimes the decision is, so that would involve probation, right? And sometimes the decision is, what you have done is just so bad, so wrong, so harmful, that it is my job to protect this community, while also recognizing that we don't throw human beings away. That's not my philosophy. That's somebody's son, that's somebody's brother, somebody's uncle, somebody's father. And so it's about a just amount of punishment for the thing that has been done, and giving them hope to be able to come back out and make something of their life so that they can be a productive member of society.
So you stated that it's kind of not your job to throw human beings away, but at a certain point, criminals have thrown away their own humanity. There's a thing going around now called MAP, Minor Attracted Persons, because they like kids. At a certain point, that's no longer human. When these cases come to you and you're talking about sentencing and, not throwing a human being away, or substance abuse may have, led to some of this, as somebody who knows about abuse, it's not right to go forth and put that abuse upon somebody else. These type of people have the highest recidivism rate amongst any criminals. That means once they do it, they do it again and then again. And recently we had a trial where a sex trafficker went to prison for sex trafficking nobody, and had nobody on the docket as somebody they sex trafficked people to. How would you go about handling situations in your court?
Frank, I prosecuted pedophiles for almost 6 years, so I'm quite familiar with pedophilia, sexual attraction to children, the recidivism rates, the ability to rehabilitate these types of people who have sexual attraction to children, what services are available, what services are not available. One of the things that I've dedicated my life to is protecting children in this community, and I have done it at a great personal trauma to myself. I've watched a lot of videos of children being raped, child pornography, child sexual abuse material, and I've prosecuted people who watch and get off on that stuff. I have prosecuted sex traffickers. I have prosecuted people who have serial rapists. And I have investigated and prosecuted people who have murdered children. So I am constrained by Nevada law. I am constrained by what a statute permits me to do. I take all those things into consideration. But I was a prosecutor, and I know sometimes how hard it is to deal a case. I know what it feels like when a judge blows up the agreement that you had with the defense attorney. And I think one of the things that folks who are not actively in the system don't realize is it is extremely traumatic for a child to recount their molestation and abuse in a room full of strangers. So there's terrible crimes. There needs to be consequences. But there has to be some credit given to the child who just doesn't want to testify. That's their right too. And I have to honor that right. I can't tell you what I would do in any individual case. I've sent some sex offenders to prison, and I've given some sex offenders probation. That's public record. You can look it up. I have to look at the human being in front of me. I have to look at the documents and the evidence that the prosecutor and the defense attorney give me. And I have to listen to the victim. And sometimes the victim is telling me what they want to do. And I have to think about that too. I hope you don't think I'm being evasive with this answer. That's not my intention. It weighs heavy on me. I don't ever send somebody to prison and not have difficulty going to sleep at night. I also know that I have a duty to keep this community safe, and that weighs heavy on me. It's a heavy burden to bear, but I think I am the best person to bear that burden, given my history and my temperament. And I think the attorneys who appear in front of me would tell you that's true too.
Judge Roohani, what religion are you, or are you a religious person? And do you have a political preference?
So I am a Baha'i, and so when I mentioned that my family are religious refugees from Iran, it's very well documented how the Baha'is were treated and are treated in Iran. With respect to political preference, I can't answer that question on the judicial canons.
Would you ever allow your faith to intervene in your decision in a trial?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Would you ever allow your religion to influence your thought on a trial?
This is difficult to answer, and let me tell you why. I want to tell you no, because I don't think it's relevant. What I believe, whether it's my religious beliefs, my personal beliefs, my philosophical beliefs, my political beliefs, my job is to follow the law and apply the law as it's written. Stay in my lane. It's the most important thing. But each individual is a product of their upbringing. And I was raised in a particular faith. And I was raised to believe that men and women are equal in the eyes of God. And I was raised to believe that there should be no discrimination based upon race. And I was raised to believe a whole host of things. I do set that aside. I think I set that aside. But there is implicit bias. Every person has it, whether it's their religious or any other type of preference. What I can tell you is I actively work to make sure to put that aside. And the way that I do that is advice that I received from a judge that I used to appear in front of. So when I became a judge, the piece of advice that he told me is always listen to the person that you disagree with more. Whoever the side is that you disagree with, that's the party that you listen to more. Consider their position more before you make a decision. It has served me well. It really has. And so I think that by doing that actively, every single day, every single decision that I make, it helps me put aside all my biases. I'm not perfect. I'm a human being. I think that it is not fair to try to hold judges to a higher standard. We are human beings. We are allowed to make mistakes. But I think having a judge who actively works to set that aside is important. And that's what I try to do.
Okay. Let me follow up just a little bit with that. First off, I want to, I was going to save this for the end, but I'll just do it now. First off, I want to commend you for your honesty, because one of the things I can tell you honestly, Judge, and I understand, I'm not trying to bash anybody that's come in front of us, because running for office and being in front of a panel was very nerve-wracking, to say the least. I know, I was there. But your honesty, I appreciate that. Based on that, though, one of the things like we talk about, or I talk about specifically, is the courtroom is a very scary place. Even if you're somebody that's been a court observer, you've been in court voluntarily or involuntarily, it's still it could be a scary place. On the bench, what do you do? I mean, with what you can, you still have to do your job to kind of put both sides at ease. If you see a litigant that is obviously super nervous and maybe they're silly enough to represent themselves, okay, we all know that quote. What would you do to kind of put them at ease so that it's not quite as scary?
I want to tell you a story to answer that question, if that's okay. So I just finished a jury trial yesterday. Yesterday was Thursday, right? Yes, I just finished a jury trial yesterday. And one of my jurors was a woman who disclosed during the jury selection process that she had severe PTSD from the last time she had been in a courtroom. And she said that she was having severe anxiety and that she really didn't want to serve on the jury. And then she sat in my courtroom for 2 weeks. And afterward, I asked her, I said, how do you feel? And she said, you're lighthearted. It's a serious process and you have the solemnity of it, but you don't take yourself too seriously. And where it's appropriate to make a lighthearted joke, I do so. I try to be self-effacing. And she said that it has completely changed her view of our system. I've had criminal defendants comment that they've never seen a judge laugh in the courtroom so much. Not laugh at them, but just be lighthearted. It is a serious process and it is so scary and it's so confusing. It's confusing for lawyers. I can't even imagine being a layperson trying to navigate this labyrinthian system that we have. It is the responsibility of the judge to set the tone in the courtroom. Be serious when it's time to be serious. Be lighthearted when it's time to be lighthearted. Foster at least a civil relationship between both sides. That doesn't always happen. Lawyers fight. They're paid to fight. So it's about when you set the tone of the respect that you show everybody, they match it. People always rise to the challenge. That's what I think we forget. We do it with students and teachers. If a teacher sets a high bar, those kids will meet it. And it's the same thing in my courtroom. I am the barometer. If I keep the energy low when a litigant is very excitable, he will match my energy. If I am being serious, they will match my energy. And if I'm being lighthearted, they will also match my energy. I think I'm good at reading a room. It has served me well so far in my life. It has served me well with juries when I was a trial attorney and a prosecutor. But it has certainly served me well in making sure that I treat this position as a public service to make sure that people have access to the courts, that they have their fair day, that they are treated with dignity and respect.
So mine's one quick question and then a not so quick question. Are you pro 2A or against 2A?
I am pro whatever the United States Constitution says and the interpretation of that either by the United States Supreme Court or the Nevada Supreme Court. The Second Amendment is enshrined in the Bill of Rights. It is the Second Amendment. And so it was important enough to be the second. And as a judge, it's not my lane to have an opinion about it.
Okay, so you mentioned your lane a lot, which I do appreciate, but the people that will come see you the absolute least are CCW holders. I don't think you've probably ever seen one sitting on a bench. They commit less crimes than police officers do, but criminals don't have an issue using guns to commit crimes. You're going to see those cases. You're going to deal with that. With these repeat offenders, people getting in and out and constantly using firearms to harm the people in your district and just the people in Nevada, how are you going to start curbing that? I know you can't change what litigation is. I know you can't change what laws are, but you can change sentencing. You can give a harsher sentence for repeat offenders using weapons. Is that something you're going to do if you have repeat offenders using weapons to harm your community?
So I think the key here is there's two things I want to focus on with respect to your question. The first is violence, right? The level of violence that a person exhibits and the amount of actual harm that they are causing during the course of the commission of a crime is is a very huge factor for me because, like I said, there have to be consequences for your actions. For every effect, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? And so when you put that into the world, when you put that violence in the world, there needs to be a consequence for it. So yes, absolutely, 100 million %, I consider it every time. The other part of it is repeat offender, right? One of the things that I really appreciate about Nevada law is it's about graduated sanctions. And this is what I mean. I give you a chance. You've never been convicted of any crime before. I think you should get a chance. You mess it up. Well, can I give you a harsher sanction that's short of the ultimate sanction? I try that. But sometimes it is very clear to me that people are not learning the lesson that is trying to be taught. They don't respect the law. They don't respect this community. They don't respect the lives of human beings. And that absolutely factors into the decision. So, for example, we get a pre-sentence investigation report that is provided by probation. It includes a person's prior, what they were originally charged with, what they ultimately pleaded guilty to, and what the sentence was. When I see someone who has served a 12 to 30 on a crime, and the next time they served 14 to 48, and the next time they served 8 to 20, and they show up in front of me, the 12 to 30 didn't work. The 14 to 48 didn't work to impress upon them what was important. And the 8 to 20 didn't either. I can't tell you what I would do in any individual situation, but absolutely. Graduated sanctions, repeat offenders, and the amount of violence are among the most important things in my consideration when I'm sentencing someone.
Okay, well, Judge, we're going to cut it a little bit short because your opponent, I think you put it best, was rude and didn't show up.
I just want to be clear that is not what I said.
No, it's not what you said. You said it would be impolite for you not to come when you were asked to come. And obviously your opponent didn't feel the same way. So let me rephrase because I don't want... Yeah, I'm sorry for that, Judge. So now that's going to conclude our questions. So now you have a minute and a half to go ahead and look into the camera and tell people why they should reelect you and how to get involved in your campaign and all your contact information.
I am Ellie Roohani, and I am your judge in Department 11. I have spent my entire life serving this community, and this is the highest and best use of my ability, and I would like to continue serving this community in this capacity. I'll be on your ballot in November, and I would appreciate your support. If you are interested in following me in the community, seeing what I'm doing, not just on the bench, but also making sure that I am a member of this community and giving back in other ways, you can follow me on social media, on my judge account, on Facebook, Judge Ellie Roohani, District Court Department 11. You can follow me on Instagram at Judge Ellie Roohani and on Twitter at Judge Roohani. I think it is important for people to care about the judges that they have. The most likely person that you are going to interact with, that you vote for, is a judge. I encourage everyone to do their research. If you want to learn more about me and my background and my experience, go to www.ellie4judge.com. My email is on there. My phone number is on there. Please reach out. And if you want to come watch court, I'm in courtroom 3E in the Regional Justice Center, and you're always welcome to come and see exactly what type of judge I am. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you, Judge. And with that, that'll conclude our endorsement interview for Clark County District Court Judge, Department 11.